Hi everyone and welcome to another video. In today's video I'm going to be doing a Q&A, but I'm going to be doing a Q&A with a difference because all the questions which I'm answering I'm going to be asked to be submitted to me on my Instagram now whilst I'm out. So in other words, there's going to be no prep for these questions, and I just hope that I get some questions sent in to me. Otherwise it's just me walking around rambling and it's going to be a very dull video. So fingers crossed I get some questions and let's see how it goes. Hi everyone, I'm just out at the moment making a Q&A video, but I want this to be a bit of a Q&A video with a difference because all the questions that I'm answering I would like you to send in to me now whilst I'm out. So I'll be out here for about 2 hours I think answering your questions, so if you do have any questions at all please let me know and I will include them in the video. Thank you very much. Okay, so I may have a problem already, which is that the place that I've come to, which is a lovely place, has very little phone reception. So as I'm just looking at my phone at the moment, I only have 2 bars of reception and 3G, and even that is very on and off. So I may have fallen at the first hurdle in that I can't even post my Instagram story where I ask for questions, but fingers crossed I will be able to find a little bit of area of reception so I can do that. Otherwise it's going to be a very dull video. Okay, so the first question is, have I ever cried during a wedding? I don't think I have. I've definitely felt emotional quite a lot of times, and it's usually during the speeches, because the speeches I think are a time when you can hear things that people don't often say. You know, people are really heartfelt at that time of the day, and that can sometimes really come across. And I think especially if it's words that are said by somebody who doesn't often, or you get the feeling anyway, else you don't really know people very well, but you get the feeling they don't often express themselves verbally in that way very often. That's when I can really feel it. But I don't think I've ever cried, to be honest. I think sometimes you can be so focused on trying to get the moment that you've sort of got your work head on. I think that's how I feel. So if there's a moment where I think, oh, this is actually like really hard hitting, my instinct is to think, I'm going to get something good here, as opposed to sort of letting me personally sort of get too emotionally involved. So I think that will be the reason. So yeah, I've never actually personally cried, but if you do, I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. I think it's really nice to experience the emotion as long as you capture it at the same time. Okay, so next question is, hey Neil, have you a great hint about using the white balance when using coloured gels? There's loads of things you can do with gels and loads of creative effects that you can make, but in terms of just like a really quick hint, and this is how you can use your white balance and gels to create really punchy skies. So you can really exaggerate the blues, or you can exaggerate the oranges if there's any warmth in the sky. And the way to do that is, if you have a bit of blue in the sky and you want to make that blue really, really blue, then if you use a warm gel, a CTO gel can do, or an orange gel for a really exaggerated effect, and you use that gel on your couple, what you would then do to bring down the white balance of the couple so that they don't look like they're orange, is you're going to lower your white balance considerably. And when you do lower your white balance that much, 2 things will happen. One, you should give your couples a nice and realistic skin tone, but in addition to that, you will also be making the sky really, really cold in terms of the colour temperature that you're shooting at, and that will make it very, very blue. And conversely, you can do the opposite if you want to make the sky really warm. This works particularly well if you've got a little bit of an orange in the sky, or the sky's already a little bit warm, then you can make it look like it's on fire by using a blue gel to hit the couple with. Because again, if you use a blue gel to light up your couple, they're going to look ill for a start, but to make them look better, you're going to raise your white balance, your Kelvin, manually. So that's going to make the couple look like they're not ill, but it's also going to make the sky look very, very warm. And these little tricks can work really well if you have a little bit of colour already in the sky. So as I say, if the sky has a little bit of blue, then you can make that blue look really striking. Or or if the sky has a little bit of orange or warmth to it, you can make it look really, really warm just by using coloured gels. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, so next question, will I be doing more workshops? Now I've actually already answered this, or attempted to film my answers to this, but I was walking up a hill at the time and that didn't go so well. Workshops, then please do. Why am I answering this question walking up a big hill? I don't know. So the answer to your question, and thank you for sending it in, is yes, I definitely will be. I love doing workshops, and the satisfaction you get from helping somebody on a workshop is really similar to when you leave a wedding and know that you've done a really good job. So I will definitely be doing more of them. Because my workshops at the moment are very much focused on off-camera flash, I tend to do the workshops in March and October for two reasons really. One is because I really want it to be an element of darkness, because obviously if you're using off-camera flash, then bright conditions aren't really helpful. So I find that doing them in March and October really lends itself well to that. But also in the summer months, obviously I'm really busy with my own weddings and I don't want the workshops to overtake my wedding photography at all. So that's when I do them in March and October, and I tend to do maybe 3 or 4 in each month. Now the March ones for this year have all sold out now. Thank you to everyone who's booked on. I couldn't believe that they sold so quickly. But I will be announcing my October dates in the summer. So what I'd ask you to do, if you haven't already done so, is please sign up to my main list. I'll put a link in the description, and then you'll be amongst the first to know when I do release more dates. And you'll also receive emails as well about the other training that I do, which is my Lightroom Live webinars. So I hope that helps answer your question. Okay, and the next question, mistakes you made in your photography business. I have made countless mistakes. I think it's absolutely inevitable that when you're starting out doing something new, whether it's wedding photography or whatever it is, you're going to make mistakes, and I'm no exception to that at all. Off the top of my head, the biggest ones, I can remember going to the wrong church for a wedding once, and there was 2 churches really close to each other, and I thought I knew which one it was. It wasn't, so I've done that. I've also photographed the wrong wedding reception. With this one, it was a wedding at Manchester Town Hall, and I photographed the ceremony, beat the bride and groom back to the reception venue, which unbeknownst to me had 2 weddings on. So I started photographing the details of the wedding reception room that I assumed was my wedding. It wasn't my wedding. But I think this is really a question that is best answered in a whole video, because mistakes are one thing, and those 2 mistakes are just down to my poor planning, and luckily, touch wood, they didn't really come to any bad consequences. But what I'm more interested in talking about, I think, in a future video is failures, because I'm a big fan of failing, because I don't see failing as being necessarily a bad thing, because 2 things happen if we fail. One is that we learn from those failures so that they don't happen again. But sometimes, you know, as in life, I think you have to make a mistake to then not make it again in the future. So failure does have an upside, but the biggest one for me, and the biggest reason that I think failure can be healthy and almost like encouraged sometimes, is because if you're failing, it shows that you're trying something new. And if we don't try anything new, then really we're not progressing as photographers. So if I leave a wedding and everything's gone perfect, every shot that I took worked, this never happens by the way, but if it did, every photograph that I attempted came out really well, in a way I don't think I pushed myself hard enough. Because if I am pushing myself, then I'm bound to fail, and that's why I mean that failure can be healthy. So I hope that sort of answers your question in a roundabout way. But yeah, the 2 biggest mistakes I can think of is going to the wrong church, which is the worst feeling in the world if you're a wedding photographer and then you realise and it's just before the ceremony. Luckily all was fine. I could walk to the other church, they were that close, but you know, it's a horrible feeling. And I say the other one, in a way, I think I can sort of like let myself off with that. So a great question, and one that I want to get into a bit more detail in a whole video in itself. So thank you very much for that question. Okay, next question. Do I use on-camera flash? And if so, do I have any Godox recommendations? My actual first question before I answer that question is it Godox or Godox? So who knows? So if you could let me know, that'll be cool. But in terms of do I use on-camera flash, yes I do. Not very often at all. The times that I would use it would tend to be during dancing with the flash on the camera. And if I'm doing that, then I would recommend the Godox, who knows, V860. I think it's called. I'll put it on the screen anyway. They're just a very traditional shaped speed light, and you can just pop that onto your camera, assuming you have a hot shoe, and you can direct the head of the flash then to bounce. So I never actually use on-camera flash direct. I would always be bouncing if the situation allows that, and I tend to use it, as I say, just to drag the shutter. So that would tend to be the only time, realistically, to be honest, that I would use on-camera flash. But again, nothing wrong if you do. You can always bounce off walls, and that in effect is off-camera flash, because the direction of the light will then be coming from somewhere other than your camera. But yeah, I don't tend to use it very much, so I hope that answers the question. Okay, and next question. In which country would you most like to photograph a wedding? Now, I think I've actually already answered this in a previous Q&A, but I think it's a really good question, so I'm more than happy to answer it again. It's always been between two for me, and that is New Zealand and Iceland. Now, I've been lucky enough to visit Iceland, and it was amazing. I've never been to New Zealand though, so I'd probably put New Zealand first, but that's purely because I've never been there. But some amazing news, which I am so excited about, is it looks as though I've just literally in the past couple of weeks or so booked a wedding for next year in Iceland, and I literally can't wait for that. It's going to be amazing. And one of the things that I've already spoken about with the bride and groom is going to be me sort of vlogging that experience and being able to show on my channel what that experience is like, because I say Iceland is a phenomenal country. It's so bizarre and so beautiful at the same time, and it is a photographer's dream. When I went there, I was just blown away. So yeah, I can't wait for that. So the answer is New Zealand, but don't get me wrong, like Iceland is that far away, and I can't wait for next year. It's going to be amazing. It's getting a bit cold now, so this may be the last question. Will you plan the couple poses before the shoot or during the shoot? A little bit of both, really. I have, when it comes to bride and groom portraits, a couple, well, maybe 2 or 3 go-to poses which I use regardless of the venue. But also, I will always scope out the venue, not so much always in advance of the day, but certainly on the day, where that means we get into the venue earlier or later in the day. I'll have a good look around and try and see as much potential in the venue itself. So I'm not doing just generic shots that I could do anywhere. I'm doing shots that are specific to that venue and making the most out of that venue for the couple. But yeah, so I have a few go-to poses that I can use sort of anywhere and everywhere, if you like, and I think that's a really good idea to have 2 or 3 that you can just use and work well. But then the rest of the couple portraits I will try and make very specific to the wedding venue itself. And a very similar question, tips for wedding portraits. I get blank when posing bride and grooms for portraits. That's a very common thing, I think, among wedding photographers, because we can often feel nervous at that point in the day. So I think that the first thing that I would say is to try and, as I mentioned in my last answer, try and have a couple of go-to poses that work well for you and that you can use more or less anywhere and any time, regardless of maybe of the light or of the weather, so it can work indoors as well, because once you have them go-to poses, that's going to give you a good foundation to then work on. So that's the first thing that I would say. And then the second thing I would say as well is have a couple maybe of prompts to maybe bring emotion and moments out of the couple. So I have a few questions which I will often ask couples, which I know are going to get nice little reactions from them both. There's a couple of games which I can sometimes ask them to play with each other, again, to create moments. So if you have a couple of go-to poses and a couple of things that you can say to bride and groom which are going to really bring the emotion out, that's going to give you a good foundation to work on. Because once you know, if you're anything like me, once you know you've got a couple of good portraits portraits in the bag, as it were, then the rest of the portrait shoot becomes really easy because you've got confidence. So yeah, that will be my tips when it comes to couple portraits. So just because it's getting really cold now and quite dark, and I'm in the middle of nowhere here, as you can probably tell, so I don't really want to be left out here in the dark, so I'm going to say that's the end of the video now. But a massive thank you to everyone who sent in questions. I really appreciate it, and I just think it's really cool that all the questions which I've answered today have been sent in to me on my Instagram in the past couple of hours. So thank you to everyone who has sent in your questions, and I hope you've enjoyed my answers and they've been of some use to you. I do plan on making these videos fairly regularly in the future, maybe once every month or a couple of months or something like that. So if you'd like me to answer any of your questions, then please keep an eye on my Instagram, because when I next do one, I'll again post it to my stories asking for questions, and then you can submit yours then. So thank you again for watching the video. I hope you found it useful, and I will see you next time. Cut.